Zoro and Sanji, the wings of the future Pirate King, and the reigning emperors of the sea, are also known as Yonkos. Ever since Wano, we've witnessed the monster trio evolve into powerhouses ready to take on any challenge. Luffy with Gear 5 has reached a level where he can stand toe to toe with any Yonko. But what about his left and right hand man? In today's video I'll share my thoughts on how Zoro and Sanji would fare in a battle against a Yonko. Even before achieving King of Hell, Zoro had an impressive portrayal. Early in Wano he made Big Mom fear his attack and even warned Kaido to dodge. Later Zoro stood between a combined attack from Kaido and Big Mom for a short period, a feat no one else accomplished. His greatest moment came when he unleashed Ashura, unlocked Conqueror's Haki and scarred Kaido, something that even Luffy, Kid and Law couldn't do at the time. Even without Ashura, Zoro arguably outperformed the rest of the supernovas. For simplicity, let's say Zoro without King of Hell was roughly on par with pre-advanced Conqueror's Haki Luffy. During his fight against King, he unlocked King of Hell mode, becoming so powerful that he forced King to deactivate his Flame Zone state despite the fact that King in that state had previously tanked Zoro's attack without taking any damage. In the end, Zoro even blitzed King mid-air, even though prior he was just playing around with him. A major drawback Zoro had was his inability to maintain King of Hell for long, as he was on a time limit. However, in Egghead he appears to have improved upon that flaw. He casually used King of Hell against Lucci in a prolonged fight, suggesting he can sustain it much longer than before. While he still may have stamina issues, it's fair to say he can fight more comfortably now than when he fought King. He might even be able to use Ashura in conjunction with King of Hell, but I won't consider it in this video. Sanji, the other wing of the Pirate King. During the Onigashima raid, he was captured by Black Maria. Due to his personal code of never hitting women, he endured severe punishment before escaping. Afterward, he faced Queen, the second strongest member of the Beast Pirates. Even before his Germa awakening, he seemed to handle his fight better than Zoro did against King. By the end of the battle, Sanji moved so fast that Queen couldn't even perceive him. He then finished him off with a devastating combo using Ifrit Jambe, his strongest power-up. Thanks to his Germa awakening, Sanji gained regenerative abilities, an exoskeleton, and enhanced muscle strength. When combined with Ifrit Jambe, he becomes nearly unstoppable. In Egghead, Sanji managed to stun a Seraphim even without using Ifrit Jambe. Meanwhile, Zoro's Iai Sonson was less impressive against S-Shark. To be fair, S-Shark had already been injured before Sanji's attack, but the feat suggests that Germa awakening Sanji is above base Zoro without Ashura. The same Zoro who could cut Kaido's scare. With Ifrit Jambe, Sanji should be capable of defeating a Lunarian with little difficulty, just like Zoro. Now in Elbaf, he appears to be using Ifrit Jambe more casually, implying he has little trouble maintaining it in the short term. Individually, they seem strong, but what should also be considered is that they have great chemistry. While yes, they bicker a lot, when it's time to perform, they can swallow their pride and work together. During Long Land Island, they were able to work together and execute a plan without discussing it in detail, and during Wano, not only do they cover each other's back, but they can perform a combo attack. With all of this, let's look at how they stack against the Yonkos. Our first opponent, Big Mom. From a young age, Big Mom was already a menace. As a child, she single-handedly defeated warriors from Elbaf, the world's strongest army. She was also a member of Zebek's crew, the same crew that forced Marines, pirates and possibly even the Holy Knights to unite just to take them down. During Wano, she clashed with Kaido for 3 days despite being weakened, and later took on the supernovas before ultimately falling to Kid and Law. She possesses all 3 types of Haki, including advanced Conquest Haki, making her one of the most well-rounded fighters in the series. In terms of raw strength, Big Mom was able to fight on equal footing with base Kaido, even without 2 of her 3 main homies, that being Prometheus and Zeus. During the raid, she consumed countless souls, receiving a massive power boost. In that stage, she outperformed both Kid and Law combined for a long time, both of whom, even without their awakenings, were roughly on par with Gear 4 Rio Luffy individually. Big Mom's durability is no joke. Her skin is so tough that normal swords can't even pierce her. That might not seem like a big deal at first, but compare that to Whitebeard, who was critically injured by a sword stab despite being the world's strongest man. That's a weakness Big Mom simply doesn't have. Even in her powered up state, she was able to withstand numerous attacks from Kid and Law, including their awakened abilities. And funnily enough, her defeat wasn't due to a lack of strength. It was because Kid and Law pushed their devil fruits to the absolute limit and outsmarted her. Think about it, Kid's railgun wasn't meant to knock her out, but to push her off the island. Meanwhile, Law pulled off a new room technique that completely silenced everything inside. That's just incredibly convenient. Now, I'm not saying Big Mom would have beaten them effortlessly, especially since both Kid and Law had already taken massive damage from other fights before facing her. However, the way she lost shouldn't be interpreted as her being weaker than weakened versions of Law and Kid. That said, speed is where Big Mom starts to fall short. Even from a portrayal standpoint, she comes across as slow and the feats support that. For example, when Luffy was completely exhausted from Gear 4, she tried to hit him, only for Zoro to swoop in, grab Luffy and fully dodge her attack. He didn't even use an advanced speed technique, he simply moved and dodged. And no, she wasn't holding back. One of her biggest reasons for going to Wano was to eliminate Luffy. Even in her fight against Kid and Law, their speed allowed them to outmaneuver her, making it much harder for her to land hits. Some argue that she caught Marco at one point, but I'd say that had more to do with Marco focusing on Prometheus rather than a display of her superior speed. But for the sake of discussion, I'll grant her speeds above Marco. Big Mom's Devil Fruit and homies. Big Mom's Soro no Mi allows her to steal life force and give it to inanimate objects, creating homies. Her most powerful ones are Napoleon, a sword that lets her perform devastating slashes like Ikkoku Sovereignty and Cognac Strike. Hera, a storm cloud who should be stronger than Zeus, that lets her unleash massive lightning attacks like Fulgora. Prometheus, a living flame, essentially giving her the ability to hurl fireballs. Individually, these homies are already powerful, but they can also fuse together to create an even stronger attack, such as Mesa Cannon and 3000 Leagues of Misery, her most powerful known move. How would Zoro and Sanji fare against her? For this battle, I'll consider Giant Big Mom. To be completely honest, it's a one-sided fight. Zoro's attacks before unlocking King of Hell were already capable of cutting Kaido's scales. And while Big Mom's skin is tough, it's simply not on Kaido's level. It's even worse when you consider that King of Hell Zoro is heavily implied to be capable of cutting Flame Zone King, whose durability is even greater than Kaido's. The same applies to Sanji's attack power. So what are Big Mom's options? She either has to block, overpower or dodge their attacks, but taking them head on, not happening. Zoro would slice her up and Sanji would roast her like a well-cooked meal. Zoro and Sanji are both significantly faster than King and Queen, whereas Big Mom is only vaguely faster than Marco. Sure, Marco is fast, maybe even faster than King, but let's not forget that Queen was at least able to perceive his movements. Against Sanji, Queen couldn't even see him due to his speed, and when he became visible, Queen just couldn't do anything. couldn't even move slightly out of the way. Similarly, King, who had an aerial advantage, couldn't react to Zoro's final attack. While not as extreme as Sanji's speed, it's still an incredible feat. Marco doesn't scale to that level of speed, and by extension neither does Big Mom. This means Big Mom's attacks would be easy to dodge, while she, on the other hand, wouldn't be able to avoid theirs. What about her homies? Her homies individually are too slow and too weak to do much, even if she were to spam attacks to limit Zoro and Sanji's movement. I just don't see her landing a hit with them. In fact, fusing her homies might make things worse. While it would create a stronger attack, it also makes her offense more predictable, since the homies have to strike in unison rather than individually. Side note, Law was able to cut Misery. Look, I know it's a feat that Zoro hasn't done, but let's be serious for a second. If Law can cut it, so can Zoro. It's irrelevant for this fight, but worth mentioning in my opinion. What if she lands a hit? I don't think she can, but hey, sometimes slower characters can land hits on faster ones. Luffy managed to hit Kizaru after all, but even if Big Mom lands a clean shot, Sanji, thanks to his Germa genes, would recover easily. He already survived being pancaked by a queen with no lasting damage. Also, he was able to kick Kizaru's laser, which should not be underestimated. These lasers were said to be too early for Seraphims, the ones who Luffy compared to Kaido. Do with that information whatever you want. Zoro is an endurance monster. He temporarily took Hakai, a combined attack from Big Mom and Kaido, and kept going. Then moments later he surpassed himself and his crewmates, and that's assuming Big Mom even has an attack on that level, which she doesn't. Honestly, I'm not even sure if she scales to Thunder Bagua Kaido. What's the greatest strength feat Big Mom has? Be equal to base Kaido? Zoro and Sanji individually surpassed that. Yes, she can beat up the rooftop squad, who didn't have advanced conquerors. Cool. Their strength feats are just bad. Look, I don't want to make some edgy stuff and say Zoro and Sanji are stronger than Big Mom. What I will say is that the speed gap is way larger between them than the strength gap. Let me ask you guys, what do you need from them for you to believe they beat Big Mom individually? You expect them to defeat a Yonko? Which one? Maybe an Admiral. I'm not saying they do it with no sweats, but what would be enough for you guys to say Zoro and Sanji can beat her? It's not as if I'm using some high tier Yonko, it's Big Mom. The reality of the fight. This battle would basically be Zoro and Sanji repeatedly attacking her with lethal strikes while Big Mom spins around trying and failing to hit them. Even if she manages to clash with one of them or land a hit, it wouldn't be significant. Think of it like Big Mom is a Titan and Zoro and Sanji are both Levi Ackerman. The Titan will get cooked. If Zoro and Sanji can maintain their highest power-ups for more than 10 minutes, I honestly think they could defeat her individually. Obviously, if this version of Big Mom loses, so does any other versions of her, since they are all weaker. Next, we have Kaido. Kaido, known as the strongest creature, hails from the demon race and once fought alongside Big Mom during their prime. Over the years, he's clashed with some of the strongest people in the world and built a reputation for being nearly unkillable. In Wano, he fought a gauntlet of powerful opponents with almost no rest and only fell to Luffy after he awakened Gear 5, the power of a literal god. Throughout the arc, Kaido often held back or handicapped himself in battle, but still overwhelmed almost everyone he faced. He possesses all three types of Haki, including their advanced form, and even mocked Future Sight as just a neat trick. Kaido's strength is hard to measure cleanly, mainly because of how many people he fought and how long he fought them. During the third act of Wano, he ran through the 9 Red Scabbards, Luffy after he learned Rio, Zoro, Law, Kid, Yamato, Advanced Conquerors Luffy, and finally awakened Gear 5 Luffy, who he then lost to. That's an insane feat of endurance and strength. But as the battles dragged on, Kaido was clearly taking damage, especially since he didn't actively try to dodge or block most attacks. And let's not forget, he was also lifting an entire island at the time. On the other side, Luffy returned from near death, was exhausted, had his stamina drained by his awakening, and still managed to win. That alone tells us Luffy by the end clearly surpassed Kaido. But at the same time, we never saw a fully rested, all-out Kaido at 100%. Against Gear 5, Kaido did land some solid hits, but Luffy mostly dominated. Kaido just couldn't keep up with the creativity, speed and power Gear 5 brought to the table. The only time he really pressured Luffy was in his flaming drum dragon form, but ironically that form might be the worst choice against the duo he's facing next. Kaido's fire-based attacks work against him here because Sanji thrives in heat. His entire power set is based on high speed, high temperature kick. Zoro can literally cut fire using the Fox Fire style technique. Because of that, Kaido's flame beam form would get countered hard. He'd have to rely on his hybrid form, his most balanced and dangerous state. I'd say hybrid Kaido is stronger than Gear 4 Luffy, but still below Gear 5. I would still put him strength-wise above current Zoro and Sanji individually. However, together, Zoro and Sanji have incredible synergy. We've seen them overpower King and Queen with combined attacks, both of whom were top tier fighters. That coordination could give them the edge to overpower Kaido's raw strength. But where Kaido truly shines is his stamina and endurance. He can fight for hours, take brutal hits, and just keep going. That's his biggest advantage. So the real question is, can Zoro and Sanji take him down before running out of gas themselves? I think they can, but barely. If they're able to maintain their strongest forms, coordinate their attacks, and avoid dragging the fight out too long, they could defeat Kaido. But make no mistake, it would be a brutal, high difficulty fight. If they slip up or let it go on too long, Kaido's endurance might carry him to victory. Next up, we have Whitebeard, the man who stood as Roger's equal, the one who roamed the seas as the strongest man in the world. His devil fruit, the Gura Gura no Mi, is said to have the power to destroy the One Piece world itself. Let's be honest, Prime Whitebeard absolutely wipes the floor with Zoro and Sanji. I don't even think it needs much explanation. There's nothing the duo could realistically do to even make him sweat. Whitebeard fought for 3 days straight against the likes of Rogers. Meanwhile, Zoro and Sanji haven't shown the ability to stay in their peak forms for longer than 3 hours. Power-wise, Prime Whitebeard stood above Roger, Garp, Sengoku, and any member of the Gorosei. Even with the biggest stretch, Zoro and Sanji are barely above Big Mom, and that's being generous. As for Haki, there's no real indication either of them surpasses Whitebeard in that area either. So yeah, Prime Whitebeard versus Zoro and Sanji? GG. Old Whitebeard though, that's a different fight. Now Old Man Whitebeard, that's a more interesting case. This might be controversial, but I'd argue that pure strength wise, he was still stronger than any Yonko, including Kaido. He fought with literal holes in his body and still shook Marineford with every swing. In many ways, he was just a more powerful version of Kaido. But here's the catch: durability. Unlike Kaido or Big Mom, Old Whitebeard doesn't have impenetrable skin. He can't just tank hits from people like Zoro. He'd either have to block, overpower or dodge, none of which are guaranteed against a duo. And then there's the heart disease, his biggest weakness. Throughout the Marineford War, his illness visibly slowed him down. At times it literally froze him mid-battle, leaving him wide open. If something like that were to happen against Zoro and Sanji, they'd capitalize on it instantly. The combination of constant heart attacks and the kind of damage Zoro and Sanji can dish out would be way more intense than anything Whitebeard would be able to put them through before going down. So while old Whitebeard still has insane strength, stamina and battle IQ, he's got too many critical weaknesses at this stage. The duo have also proven they can take punishment and keep going, and they are fast enough to exploit moments where he falters. Maybe, if old Whitebeard had constant access to his medication without it limiting his fighting ability, he could beat them. But as he was during Marineford, the fight goes to Zoro and Sanji. Shanks, the former Pirate King's apprentice, the man who inspired Luffy to chase the throne, the one who single-handedly brought the Marineford War to a halt. Shanks doesn't have many showings, but the few we do get are impactful. He clashed evenly with Whitebeard while the old man was still on his meds, and he completely obliterated Kid in one attack. Impressive! Absolutely. But if we're being strict and go purely off on-screen feats, there just isn't enough to confidently place him above Zoro and Sanji. That said, it's obvious Shanks is way stronger than what we've seen. Probably way stronger than most characters in the series. So if we're judging only based on feats, the duo wins. But realistically, that just doesn't feel fair. Blackbeard, the infamous man who scarred Shanks, the only person with 2 devil fruits. He holds the strongest Paramecia and one of the most dangerous Loias. He can suck in everything into a black hole and spit it all back out. And perhaps most terrifying of all, he can negate devil fruit abilities. He was the catalyst for Marineford and also defeated Law in a humiliating way. But like Shanks, his on-screen feats don't do enough to push him above Zoro and Sanji yet. That said, I do think he's stronger overall and definitely more versatile than Shanks. The problem? He's reckless. He tends to take way too much damage unnecessarily. Against Zoro and Sanji, that's a fatal flaw. You can't take their hits and walk it off. So again, based purely on shown feats, Blackbeard loses. Luffy, the captain of the crew, the future Pirate King, the man who will find the One Piece. He's tricky to evaluate. If you haven't seen my video on the strongest characters in One Piece, I explain why I think Wano Luffy is stronger than his Egghead version, mainly due to mentality. Egghead Luffy felt off, he was goofing around more than usual and seemed to gas out after just few minutes. That version, despite hitting hard, just doesn't have the stamina to beat both Zoro and Sanji. But Wano Luffy, that's a different beast. Not only is he stronger than both, but he also has the stamina and endurance to take them down in a semi-long fight. And if he really needs to, he doesn't, he could use Badrang and completely wipe them out. Side note, I personally think Shanks and Blackbeard scale above Luffy, but that's just my take. Buggy, they lose, no chance. So as you can see, the duo can genuinely hold their own, even against the Yonkos. It really shows how close the Straw Hats are to reaching their absolute peak. And this might be an indication that opponent-wise and arc-wise, there isn't much left. Not saying it will end anytime soon, but I do think we are reaching the final stretch. If that means it's going to take 5 years, then it is what it is, but it's cool to see and to anticipate the end of One Piece. Thanks for watching the video. I've been Sonmet, and bye.